typically, you've heard the story about, coming to PLATO, oh, it's really exciting, and you beg and plead for a job. And my path was very, very typical there. And was first took a class that used PLATO, then Bonnie Seiler, Anderson Seiler, hired me. But actually, my primary reason that I ever got deeply involved in PLATO was the fact that I wouldn't mind double anchovy pizzas. The reason why is that Bonnie was friends with David Anderson, who was one of the key architects of the PLATO system. And David always liked double anchovy pizzas, and whenever he ordered them, I wouldn't mind eating with him, and so he finally hired me. So one of the things that, this has nothing to do with this session, one of the things we should bring up is the fact that there were a cadre of us junior programmers that existed on the 5th floor, myself, Ray, Al Harkrader, Kim Mast, Larry White, a dozen of us or so, and we kind of had a little community there that we didn't realize at the time was absolutely unique. We would have parties up there and broadcast from the 5th floor of Searle, and it was very special, and we got a lot of trouble. But anyway, the game, my degree was in physics. I managed to graduate, but just barely. My interest was in using PLATO as a way to do flight simulation, and I threw together a flight simulator. My game in particular was a real problem because it was so heavily computationally intensive. If 30 people were playing my game, we would use most of the processing power of $1 million system. We would bring the system to its knees, and so my game was only playable at night, late at night, and it was still not that, and there it is, not that well tolerated. What you're not seeing here in this screenshot is, if you see the radar in the lower left, this is where you're taking off. And I know for people that are used to games today where you've got fully 3D rendered background, but back in 1973, the fact that you saw these 3D displays was just, well, for us it was mind-blowing. But on that radar, the thing that made this a game was the fact you would see 30 other people in that were trying to shoot you down while you were trying to shoot them down. And the mistake I made programming this game, which I never fixed, was that every time you press next, it goes through the entire processing cycle and calculates everything. And so you could fly faster by pressing next faster, which of course racked up the usage on a $1 million computer system. So,
the nickname was Next War.
Yeah. So I was not a friend. The Apple II came out and people were saying you should port this to the Apple II. I said it is flat out impossible to do a flight simulator on the Apple II. It can't be done. It doesn't have a floating point processor. You couldn't do it. It's impossible. And of course, Bruce.
You weren't listening, were you, Bruce?
No.
Bruce, just a simple explanation.
How did you do it?
Well,
I've always wanted to know.
Like I said before, the early displays were very primitive, and that's what made it possible. And one thing that was always imperative in my mind that throughout the development through the years people tried to change was I wanted to keep the frame rate high enough to actually be dynamic enough for people to use it as a flight simulator. There's always a temptation to make it look, the graphics look much, much better, but cut back on frame rate. So that's one thing that we always had to keep in mind, keep that frame rate up and sacrifice image quality in place of it.